تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون.
Tonight, inshallah, we will open a new chapter with 4 blessed Anbiya. And all of these Anbiya that we will mention were sent to whom? Banu Israel. Mu'adham al-Anbiya, the majority of the Anbiya were sent to Banu Israel. Allah Azza wa Jal favored Banu Israel. La shakka fi dhalik. And He sent them prophets and messengers, one after the other. ولكن كذبوا واستكبروا وقتلوا, and they killed a lot of them. نسأل الله العفو والعافية. And we concluded last week with the death of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not decree that he enter Bayt al-Maqdis. And his qawm, Banu Israel, were still in the 40-year period, the 40-year transition. And we said min al-hikmah, from the wisdom that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed this, is that they will rejuvenate a new generation. بعد موسى عليه الصلاة والسلام أتى فتاه, a young man, the young man that was mentioned in Surah Al-Kahf, Yousha ibn Nun was the young man that was mentioned that accompanied Musa عليه الصلاة والسلام on his journey to meet Al-Khidr. And the 40-year period had passed, and Yousha ibn Nun was now a young man that was ready, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the wahi to lead Banu Israel as their Nabi. And they wanted to fight for their home. They wanted to fight for their destined place to reside. And now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, لِحِكْمَةٍ بَالِغَةٍ, the inhabitants of Bayt al-Maqdis were the Jababira, al-Jababira, and they were compiled from al-Kan'aniyin wal-Fazariyin. They're Arabs, by the way, undoubtedly. So anyone who wants to argue who is the first inhabitants of Philistine, and this is clearly cited in history and in the Quran, in the Torah as well. Yousha ibn Nun was to lead this army. After 40 years, they've been rejuvenated. There is new blood, there is new youth, there is new vigor, and there is new faith. They wanted to fulfill their prophecy. So he led them into war versus Al-Jababira. Al-Jababira, these people, these were people of strength, batsh wa quwwa, not a simple task. So the war waged, and many casualties, the blood was shed, and they entered the war on a Friday, and it was a long day of war. And just when the Hazima is so close, they were so close to being victorious over the Jababira, the sun began to set. As we know, time will progress. You can be sitting in one spot or moving around. Regardless of what you're doing, time will do what's destined for it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala يُقَلِّبُ اللَّيْلَ وَالنَّهَارِ. And when the sun would set, the next day would be Saturday. And the Sabbath, as they call it, مُحَرَّمْ عَلَى بَنُ إِسْرَائِيلَ الْقِتَالَ فِيهِ. It is forbidden for Banu Israel to fight, to even do business, by the way. So Yousha ibn Nun, he is the leader, the general of this army, and he is their prophet. نَظَرَ إِلَى الشَّمْسِ, he looked at the sun, and he said, إِنَّكِ مَأْمُورًا, you are under the command of Allah, and I am under the command of Allah to fight, to claim Bayt al-Maqdis. So he made a dua, Allahumma احبسها علي, على هذا القول. وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في الحديث الصحيح يرويه أبو هريرة رضي الله عنه وأرضاه وصححه شيخنا الألباني رحمة الله عليه، قال ما حبست الشمس على بشر قط إلا على يوشع بن نون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never stopped time or the sun in its rotation except on account of one man. And that man is Yousha3. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stopped time for Banu Israel to fulfill their prophecy, to fulfill His ni'mah upon them. This is a hujjah that will forever go against them. Because what did they do? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answered the dua of Yusha, the sun stopped. لأنها مأمورة وأمرها يأتي من الله وهو خالقها. This time stopped and they continued the battle until they defeated the Jababirah. And just before they entered Bayt al-Maqdis, Yousha3, he said, stop. I have been commanded, this is wahi, divine decree, that we do not enter in any fashion except that we enter ادخلوا هذه القرية فكلوا منها حيث شئتم رغدا وادخلوا الباب سجدا وقولوا حطة. You must enter humbly in prostration. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed that they enter and they claim this victory in humbleness. What do you think they did? يعني عادتهم فبدل الذين ظلموا قولا غير الذي قيل لهم. It was narrated by the Mufassirun, they said they entered on all fours mocking. وقالوا حنطة instead of حطة. يستهزئون بمن? Who are they mocking? They're mocking their Nabi. And the decree of their Nabi comes from who? From Allah. Yani, this shows you the arrogance of Banu Israel. After all of these years, بدلوا جيلا على جيل, and still the arrogance is prevalent in their hearts. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He sent upon them رجس من السماء بما كانوا يفسقون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punished the majority of them who disobeyed, and He sent upon them a plague that devastated their populations. After some time, Yousha3 passed away, and a group of Banu Israel who were fleeing from the plague, they fled Bayt al-Maqdis and they went to the outskirts in fear that they might succumb to the plague. And they wanted to seek safety and shelter. However, Allah Azza wa Jal, He is the one who decrees everything. And subhanallah, this is a point of interest because you can try to flee from something, but if it is destined for you, it will come to you. يعني لا راد لقضاء الله ولا معقب لحكمه. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if He decrees something for you, you can run, hide, jump, whatever, it will come to you. And this reminds me of the time when Umar radiallahu anhu arda was about to enter Sham. وَكَانَ فِيهَا طَاعُونَ عَمَوَاسٍ. And they had a difference of opinion. Should they enter, should they not? Because a plague had overwhelmed the city. So after some deliberation, he decreed, we do not enter. فأبو عبيدة بن الجراح رضي الله عنه وارضاه, he said to him, أتفر من قضاء الله? Will you flee from the decree of Allah? And look at the hikmah of Al-Faruq. He said, نعم. He said, yes, I will flee from it to it. يعني أفر من قضاء الله إلى قضاء الله. فنحن قوم نأخذ بالأسباب. We take with reason and precaution, of course. I'm not telling you go lick doorknobs and لا. Take the precautions. But if you're going to get sick, you're going to get sick. Huh? There's nothing in your hands. لأن الله عز وجل هو المسبب للسبب. And this is another point that we all have to understand. You have a headache, it's very common. صداع. When you take that Advil or that Tylenol or whatever you take, and you shouldn't take these things, by the way, you should drink more water. Do you put your aman, your hope in that habba? In that pill? Many of us do. You should never associate shifa with this. الشافي من؟ الشافي من؟ الكافي من؟ الله. فيجعلها سبب. فقل بسم الله الله الشافي. So these people from Banu Israel, they thought that they could flee. ولكن the ta'un followed them and overwhelmed them. So they actually built a wall around themselves to save the bodies, because in the middle of nowhere, they were all going to die. They knew it. So to save themselves min as-siba' wal-wuhush, they said, we're just going to build a wall. So it was a graveyard. Every single one of them died. All the bodies scattered, decomposed, and it was just bones. And then comes a prophet of Banu Israel again. Perhaps this is the first time you hear his name, Hizqeel. In another pronunciation, Hizqeel, alayhi salatu wassalam. So he passed by this qaryah, and he notices all these walls. And within this compound that is closed off, juthath, decomposed bodies. So he wondered, and he says, how does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revive the dead from this dust and bones? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him divine decree. And he said, I will show you how. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions these people in the Quran. He says, أَلَمْ تَرَ إِلَى الَّذِينَ خَرَجُوا مِنْ دِيَارِهِمْ وَهُمْ أُلُوفٌ حَذَرَ الْمَوْتِ. Uluf. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu arda, in the tafsir, he says there were 3,000 and up. 3,000 people all died in this compound. فَقَالَ لَهُمُ اللَّهُ مُوتُوا ثُمَّ أَحْيَاهُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed that they all die. لأن بيده الموت والحياة. هو الذي خلق الموت والحياة. No one can change anything in this. Subhanallah. جل في علاه. Upon this, they came back. Allah قال لهم قوموا فقاموا ولما قاموا كبروا. All of them rose and they all said كرجل واحد الله أكبر. This shows you that no one can control life and death except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Hizqeel or Hizqeel called these people, Banu Israel, to Tawheed. And after him comes Nabiullah Ilias. Ilias or Iliasin. Yudhafu noon, just like subhanallah in Jazair, we have the name Ismail. We actually refer to him as Ismail. We don't even say I, we say Ismail. It's the tongue. Just like in Qira'at Warsh. There's no al-ard, there's lard. So Ismail. And in the Quran, this is from the Arabic language, Ilias wa yudhafu noon. In the end, Iliasin. It's the same Prophet, alayhi salatu wassalam. He came to Banu Israel after Hizqeel, and Banu Israel had delved deep within the Muharramat. When I say deep within the Muharramat, I mean they fell back to zina, to cheating, stealing, lying, and what's even worse? What's the worst sin? Shirk, wal-'iyadhu billah. وَاتَّخَذُوا آلِهَا وَمِنَ الْآلِهَا الَّذِي اتَّخَذُوهَا ظُلْمًا وَجُورًا بَعْلًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions this false idol that Banu Israel took. It was called Ba'lan. And Ilias came to these people, to Banu Israel, and he says about him, دَعَاهُمْ إِلَى اللَّهِ. He says, Ya qawm, what are you guys doing? They fell for the fahisha, for the fujur, ولكن أعظم ذنب الذي ارتكبوه الشرك. فدعاهم إلى التوحيد. And they rejected فكذبوه فإنهم لمحضرون. Except for a few of them. There is a lot of details I'm omitting because they're from the Israeliyat, from Banu Israel. لا نكذبها ولكن لا نعتمد عليها. We're not gonna sit here and delve within all these details, but I'm just trying to illustrate to you that prophet after prophet, messenger after messenger, all for who? For Banu Israel, for a purpose, After Ilias, Iliasin, comes Iliasa3. Iliasa3 was another messenger sent to the same Banu Israel. And he came at a time where they were still delving into shirk and coming out of shirk into tawheed, and back and forth and back and forth. And upon this, after Iliasa, they had a long drought. This long period, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not designate any prophets or messengers from them. وَلَكِنْ سَلَّطَ عَلَيْهِمْ مُلُوكٍ. سَلَّطَ عَلَيْهِمْ, meaning He persecuted them by the kings that ruled them from amongst their tribes. And they had noble tribes. Does anybody remember how many tribes they had? 11. How many عيون فجر? 12. 12 tribes. And each of these tribes had kings, nobles. So these men, because there was no Anbiya, these men took the lead and they took the helm. And they did not take it simply to better the society. No, hukum jibri. And subhanallah, if you look at the Arabs, how it's mirrored. A lot of what we see today that is going on in the Arab countries that are run by muluk. Look in the past. Khudu khibra. And these kings, they persecuted their people, they abused them, and they had no position in the earth because they had no guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And upon this, they were easy pickings. And guess who came back? Al-Jababira. And they were going to war with Banu Israel time and time again until they defeated them. And not only that, you remember the tabut of Musa, tabut al-Sakina, the box? Banu Israel would inherit this generation after generation, and they would take it with them, as we mentioned, in their ghazawat, للتبرك. During one of their ghazawat, the Jababir antasaru alayhim. They defeated them, and they pulverized them, and they took the tabut. And upon this, the king that ruled over them, he was so saddened by this loss, he died. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put them in such a deep predicament, in such a deep loss, in order for them to come back, to make tawbah to Allah. Now they lost their kingship, now they lost their position and their place and their status, they lost Bayt al-Maqdis, and they lost al-Athar, Athari Musa wa Harun, and the Tabut, الذي فيه السكينة. Everything is gone from them, لكفرهم وجهلهم. And no prophet came until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent another prophet by the name of Shaweel. Shaweel, Samuel, or as the Arabs know him, Sam'un. Sam'un min al-sam' لأن الله عز وجل سمع دعاء أمه. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a woman from Banu Israel, she called Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sincerely and invoked him to grant her a son that will bring Banu Israel out of this misery, out of this rut. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala istajaba laha, and she had Shaweel or Samuel or Sam'un, as he was named. And he came to Banu Israel and he called them back to the tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And at this moment in time, Banu Israel wanted to regain their izzah. They wanted to regain their status in this, in history. So they asked him, they said, can you grant us a king? We want a king to lead us into battle, to defeat the Jababira, to reclaim our homes. And he asked them, he says, are you sure you will fight? Yani, subhanallah, in the Anbiya, they had wahi, divine decree from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because of their history, their arrogance and their ignorance, it plagued their personalities. Even their Anbiya, they were questioning them. So he says, are you sure you will fight when the time comes? And they said, absolutely. وَكَيْفَ لَا نُقَاتِلُ? And how can we not fight? And we have been stripped from our homes. And we have been killed left, right, and center. We have lost our dignity. So he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed to him to tell them that Talut was an average man from Banu Israel. The story gets very interesting. Talut was an average man from Banu Israel. In actuality, he was referred to as a laborer. كان يسقي. He used to carry water. Some said that he used to work with animal hides. A general laborer. He was not from the noble tribes. He was not from a noble lineage. He had no mal, no wealth, nothing. He was just a commoner. ولكن Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala فضله. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gave him two aspects. He gave him bastatan fil ilm wal jism. And here we have a very critical point. Allah gave him the favor and the honor of having superior cognitive sense. He's very intelligent. وَبَسْطَةً فِي الْجَسَدِ. He was very capable and strong. He was no average pushover. Banu Israel, they saw this and they said, who is this guy? We don't even know him. He has no wealth. He has no lineage. Why should we take him as a king? They're asking their Nabi for a king. Allah decrees that this is your king. This is your king. And they say, no. This can't be it. He can't. Same thing what they did with the Baqarah. Too many questions. What does it look like? Where is it? How old is it? What color is it? And subhanallah, istamir al-jahl. They said, min ayna lahu al-mulk? Who is this guy? How can we appoint him as a king? He's a rag and tag. He's a laborer. That's all he is. Because their focal point here is they want a leader that's high, supreme, that's flossed in gold, with a crown, in the shining armor. And here comes a rajul basit, salih, Talut. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him something which cannot be seen. Yani, the intellect, and if you choose a leader in any aspect of life, specifically aspects of, in the sense of this leading a people, an army, you can't choose a rich general. If he's rich, what is he going to do? Give sadaqah to the enemy? Buy the enemy? No. He has to be a fearless, brave man who has intellect, the know-how, strategize how to defeat the enemy, and at the same time, he has to have the physical ability to lead. So they rejected, and they asked for a sign. He says, we don't believe you in the sense. So give us a sign. Ayat mulkihi, the sign of his kingship, is that he will bring the tabut of Banu Israel back to you. And Shaweel, when he said this to them, they were in shock and awe. They said, how? Allah Azza wa Jal, He decrees. And remember, the Jababira, they have tabut al-Sakina. وَفِيهِ أَثَرُ مُوسَى وَهَارُونَ. And it's in Bayt al-Maqdis. وَبَنُوا إِسْرَائِيلَ مُتَشَتِّتُونَ. They're in the middle of nowhere, scattered. They don't even have an empire. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decrees that the malaika يَأْتُونَ, they come with the tabut. عند من? عند طالوت. And upon this, Banu Israel, they said, okay, now we believe. الآن نعم. يعني آية after آية, subhanallah. So, It was decreed and they accepted. So now comes the real test. And this is all just deliberation. Do we follow him? They haven't even gotten to the meat of the pie. This is just all talk. So when they decreed that they go to war versus the Jababira, now this is where it gets really interesting. They reached the battleground. No, just before they reached the battleground, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala abtalahum binahar. On their way there, their king, Talut, he looks back and he says, stop. We're about to pass a river in Jordan, in Urdun, hafidhahullah. We all can drink. However, we can only drink one gharfa, one scoop. This is the maximum allotted for each soldier. And this is a journey, by the way. They're traveling through the desert. They've probably finished all the provisions and water. So this is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can only drink one scoop. The majority of them disobeyed. And they drank their fill. The punishment for this was that whoever disobeyed is to turn back. We want nothing to do with him. We do not need you in our army. Thank you very much. You have been signed off. Yuqal, it was said that only 300 and about 10 or 15 of them remained. Yani, from thousands, only 300 or so. And Talut and Shaweel and Sam'un, they marched on with the 300 or so that obeyed. And when they got to the battleground, they see the opposing army, the Jababira. The Jababira were already an established people. Kan'aniyun, very established. And these guys, they were all about war. Yani this is not some peasant army with rakes. La, la, la. These guys are ready. They're strapped. When these 315 or 20 saw this, they said, How can we fight these people? Yani, how can we stand in front of Jalut, Goliath and his people? فلما جاوزوه هو والذين آمنوا معه قالوا لا طاقة لنا اليوم. Right away, the majority of those 300, they said, لا طاقة. There we cannot do this today. I think we should come back another day. Right away they gave up. And they see أرقام هائلة يعني. And this brings me to a point. How many wars did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam fight with the Sahaba that they outnumbered the adu? How many wars? How many? What if I told you not a single one? Every battle that was fought by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba, they were always outnumbered by the adu. Sometimes 3-1. In Badr, 300 to 1,000. In Al-Ahzab, it was 3,000 to 10,000. By three. ولكن كم من فئة قليلة غلبت فئة كثيرة بإذن الله. When Banu Israel saw Jalut, Goliath and his army, they said, no, we can't do this. Not today. Maybe we should take a rain check on this one and we'll schedule another meeting, yeah? No. قال الذين يظنون أنهم ملاقو الله. الظن هنا التأكيد. The ones who were certain, and الظن يأتي على the unknown, but this is certainty. The ones that were certain that we will meet Allah, أنهم ملاقو الله. كم من فئة قليلة. How many? A small group defeated a larger group. بإذن الله. بإذن الله. والله مع الصابرين. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with who? The patient. The ones who are patient. So, Banu Israel thabatu fi makanihim. And the battle is about to start. And Jalut, Goliath, ever so proud of his numbers and their readiness and willingness and their strength, he challenges in Mubaraza. And this was the ada of the olden days. Before the war sets off, let's have a little appetizer. Bring forth the best of your men versus the best of our men. And Jalut, Qa'id al-Jababira, he is the general. So he said, I got this. These guys are only 300, I can take all of them. So he goes up to the front line and he says, which one of you, man yubarizuni, which one of you will fight me? No one moved. Not a sound. No one flinched because perhaps they might mistake them for a volunteer. Except one young man. Do you know who that young man was? Dawood alayhi salatu wasalam. فَتَقَدَّمَ Dawood. And Dawood was a young man. And this is before his nubu'ah. And this is before his kingship. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I always look at this nuqta, this point in history, and I say, Man warath Dawood? Who inherited Dawood alayhi salatu wasalam? In terms of his braveness, in terms of his sifa, in terms of his akhlaq. If I told you that Dawood alayhi salam destroyed Jalut with a manjaniq, with a slingshot and rocks, he destroyed him with rocks. Who does that mimic today? Who does that mimic? And you see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala لِحِكْمَةٍ بَالِغَةٍ. Till this day, Banu Israel are still being cast with stones, with rocks. The same rocks that Nabiyuhum wa Malikuhum Dawood threw, they're being thrown at. This is a hikmah that you and I have to really look into. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala يقول عن ذلك فهزموهم بإذن الله وقتل داود جالوت وآتاه الله الملك والحكمة وعلمه مما يشاء. Subhanallah. And every time I see the pictures or videos in Palestine, children standing in front of tanks, in front of armored beasts, and they have little rocks in their hands. Only the blind cannot see. ورثت داود المسلمون الفلسطينيون الشهداء المكرمون. نسأل الله أن يجعلنا منهم ويحميهم وينصر المسلمين والمسلمات ويعز الإسلام والمسلمين. Inshallah, next week we will continue and we will delve into the story of Dawood alayhi salatu wasalam. It is a very interesting story because you will learn a lot about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him signs and how he called his people to Tawheed. بارك الله فينا وفيكم ونسأل الله أن يجعل هذا الجمع جمعا مرحوما. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.